Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope you're all having a great day. And, with the combine over and free agency less than a week away as it's coming up on the 9th, I figured I'd take a look at Charles Davis's mock draft 2.0 to get maybe a sense of where some of the top picks are going to end up landing post combine and post some of the moves that we've seen um recently. So with no further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with number one, it's the same pick it will always be, which Fernando Mendoza. I mean, it would take the Raiders making a colossal mistake to not draft Mendoza, and I don't think we need him. I don't think there's much things we need to say about him. So moving on to number two, which I had in my mock draft on Monday, David Bailey. Yeah, it just seems like when you trade away Jermaine Johnson, you bring in Tavondre Sweat, meaning that you're more so prioritizing um the interior and you're gonna go after an edge, whether it's free agency or in the draft. It more so makes it seem like they'd go after an edge with the number two overall pick. And yeah, Bailey just seems like the right pick. Like I know a lot of people think Arvell Reese, but he seems more like the potential pick. And I remember back in 2022 with Trayvon Walker and Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson was the more proven guy. Walker was more of the upside guy. And the Jags went with the more upside guy. And they probably wish they went with Hutchinson because, well, him and Josh Hines Allen would be an amazing duo off the edge, and they'd be able to reliably get after the quarterback. So, yeah, if I'm the Jets, I would take Bailey, who's more of the proven guy, over Reese, who's more of the guy where it's like if he works out as an edge rusher, he'll be special. Moving on to number three with Jeremiah Love to the Cardinals. This is what else I also have this, and I mean I think it's a great fit. I know some people think this would be Ashton Gentry's rookie year 2.0 because of how bad Arizona's offense is going to be because they're going to have a new quarterback. Kyler has officially been released and will be a free agent. Um, so I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, well, Arizona should go to offensive line," but I mean, look, Jeremiah Love is that talented of a player, and look, if James Conner and Trey Benson, who are both coming off serious leg injuries, Conner who might end up being released, it's like if you can get Jeremiah Love, because like the tackle class or the offensive line class more so, like when Arizona's picking at the beginning of the second round, they can get somebody um who can be just as good as one of the top guys in Maui Noah. So like Jeremiah Love is like completely ahead of everybody else at the running back room. Well, the tackles I think are more closer, and I feel like if Arizona falls in love with Love, and they say we'd rather, sorry, we'd rather take um a great player so we can have that position filled for now instead of taking a guy who has some big question marks. I think Love would be the perfect fit. Went on to number four with the Titans. I also have this, which hey, maybe I'm looking a lot better as a analyst because of what Charles Davis. But yeah, I think Tennessee would take whoever they think like whoever the Jets don't take, they'd probably say we'll take them. That's between Reese and Bain. I'm a lot lower um on Bailey um and Reese. Like I like Bain a lot more than either of those two guys, but hey, I mean they trade for Jermaine Johnson, which means you kind of have those edges at least not fully set, but like you have those guys who can be starters there. You can have Reese play linebacker and then also rush the quarterback, and it gives Robert Saleh this sort of unique type of player where you can put him at multiple different positions and he'll work out. And I feel like in Robert Saleh's defense, that would make a lot more sense than like with the Jets, who kind of need a proven guy to kind of kickstart that defensive side. But on to number 5 with the Giants going Sonny Styles, which I also had, which so far I've been 5 for 5 with these picks with Charles Davis. And yeah, I mean they just released Bobby Okereke, which was expected. And look, John Harbaugh, he's coming over from Baltimore with the rich history of linebackers, from Ray Lewis to C.J. Mosley, Roquan Smith now. Even Teddy Buchanan looks like a future Ravens great at the linebacker position. And look, Styles was amazing. Him and Reese were phenomenal at the combine. And look, you rarely see linebackers go this high because it's not that valuable of a position. But a guy like Sonny Styles could give this team, more of a identity on the defensive side. Give this defense its quarterback to be able to put people around and maybe make it better than what it has been the last couple of years under Shane Bowen. But on to the Browns at 6. I mean, this is a pick that after making my mock draft, kind of realized that maybe I should have gone Carnell Tate because he didn't run as fast as maybe most people would have liked him, but he was still phenomenal. And look, the Browns trade for Titus Howard, meaning that you're probably going to put him at right tackle. Maybe they keep him at guard, and then you have DeJuan Jones, who I know isn't always healthy, but if you have those two tackle positions, unless you're going Vega Owane at guard, which this is pretty high for a guard, why not go with one of the receivers? And Tate would give this offense, that top receiver for whoever the quarterback is to flourish. And I think Carnell Tate would be a phenomenal pick and give Cleveland an elite offensive weapon. Fannin, Judkins, Dylan Sampson is a fine RB2. If you get Tate, that's a young nucleus on the outside where if you can build up that offensive line, if you can find the quarterback, this team can have a pretty good future. And I think if you're not sold about if you trade for Titus Howard, put him at tackle opposite of DeJuan Jones, maybe you'd rather say we'd rather go with a wide receiver instead of drafting a Maui Noah or a Freeling, when it's we can go with a elite wide receiver to complement the rest of our skill position players out there. We're on to number 7 with the Commanders, which I had this pick too, Ruben Bain. I think it'd be an amazing pick. Washington needs edge rushing help really ever since they traded away both Montez Sweat and Chase Young back in 2023. They've kind of just reliably have not had the greatest edge play the last couple of years. And look, Bain is my number 1 edge rusher. He's probably at least up there as a top 3 player in my opinion. And I know his arms are short, and people are always going to talk about that, especially after the way Will Campbell played. But I think he has the talent on film, and I think if he falls to 7, Washington would get a major steal. I know it's not that low in the draft, but it's this is a guy who probably could be the number 1 pick if Mendoza wasn't drafted. If there was no quarterback, he probably could be considered the number 1 overall pick just because of how talented he is. And I think this would be a great pick for Washington. But on to number 8 with the Saints going Mansour Delane. Interesting, keeping the LSU guy in the state of LSU, even though he's not from Louisiana, but I mean, Delane didn't work out of the combine. Neither did McCoy. Hopefully, those guys at their pro days. I mean, Delane will. Hopefully, McCoy will also at his pro day at Tennessee. Um, I mean, I don't hate it. Alontae Taylor is a free agent. You have Kool-Aid McKinstry, but you don't have another guy on the outside. And maybe if they view Tate as like this top tier, like if they view Tate and Love ahead of like Lemon, Tyson, and the rest of the weapons, they might just say we'll just go with the best defender off the board instead of trying to get a guy who we think this would be a reach for. Even though I think Lemon would be a phenomenal fit, Tyson as well. But if they think Delane can be a true shutdown corner opposite of McKinstry, I don't hate it. We're on number 9 with the Chiefs. Yeah, I mean, they released Jawan Taylor, meaning they're going to have an opening at that right tackle spot. You have at least 4 starters coming back: Josh Simmons, Suma Taia, Creed Humphrey, and Trey Smith. And look, Maui Noah would be a phenomenal fit. I know people have been talking about him moving into guard, but I think he can stick at it as a tackle. Like he can be a right tackle for a long time. And I think the Chiefs could fortify that offensive line, which is really young. They can fortify it and and give Patrick Mahomes enough protection, because we've seen in the past when Mahomes has great protection and he's able to make plays that we routinely see him make, they're contending for the Super Bowl. So if they're able to bring in Maui Noah as that right tackle, it gives this offensive line 5 guys out there who are really good, and the Chiefs hopefully will be a lot better with a more improved offensive line and better skill position players outside. Moving on to 10, Caleb Downs. I mean, if he falls to 10, Cincinnati would love him. I know there's been reports that he was diagnosed with a degenerative ACL. Meaning, like, one bad injury to his ACL could cut his career short. But Downs is like one of the top 5 players in this class. I don't think, like, especially like if this was as bad as like Will Johnson was last year, I think we'd see people like not even mocking him in the first round or mocking him like down like in the 30s. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And I think Downs, for how talented he is, Cincinnati would fall in love with him. And they're not bringing back Trey Hendrickson. He didn't get tagged, and he is not signing any type of contract with the Bengals. So he's leaving. They need a new star on that defense, and Downs gives you that to at least give Al Golden somebody out there who actually knows how to play. Moving on to 11, with the Dolphins going Jamal McCoy. I mean, if Delane isn't there, I don't hate this pick because, yes, he missed all of 2025 and he didn't work out of the combine. Um, and if he doesn't work out his pro day, people are going to say, is he Will Johnson from last year? But McCoy is still really talented. And like, if a team falls in love with him, if a team says, we are going to take this guy, if he's here, he's going to go in the first round. And a Dolphins team that is bracing for a rebuild, is bracing for, a full rebuild. Like, they are tearing this whole thing down because they have released so many guys. Not yet Tua. He'll be a June 1 cut, and that'll be revealed um at like the start of free agency, or like the start of the new league year on the 11th. But they just need to draft guys who will be talented players for a long time so they can build this thing up. And McCoy can be that and give this Dolphins team a legit corner they haven't had since probably Xavier Howard. On to 12 with the Cowboys. And another pick I had, MW Emmanuel McNeil Warren. Yeah, I think this would be a phenomenal pick. He was great in the combine, and like Dallas has two free agents at safety, and that secondary was horrible this past year. One of the many reasons Dallas's defense was one of the worst this past year. And if you get a guy like EMW in that back end, you can, give this defense a better, what's the word, a better sense of the long term. And, they hire the guy who a lot of people predicted to be Vic Fangio's replacement in Philly. He's now Dallas's DC. He's coming over, and Philly's had, Reed Blankenship and Andrew Makuba, CJ Gardner Johnson. So he knows what good safety play can help out a defense. And EMW would be a phenomenal pick to help out this Dallas defense and give them a guy in the back end to help out and maybe get people aligned better so that they're not as bad as they were in 2025. We're on to 13 with the Rams. I mean, I said it in my draft. If Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson is there, the Rams should take him. Davante Adams still was amazing this past year and still will be phenomenal in 2026, but 1 year left on his contract, meaning that who knows what the future holds. They're going to have to extend Puka. It's like, if you want to be able to continue to contend, you have to use these picks to address weaknesses that you're eventually going to have. And that second wide receiver will be a problem once Davante either leaves after 2026 or retires, at whenever. And Lemon could be a guy who's wide receiver 3 now, kind of like JSN when he got drafted to Seattle. He was low on the depth chart, and then obviously, I don't think Lemon's going to ever surpass Nacua, but you can get what I'm saying, where it's like he can be wide receiver 3 now, and then once Adam leaves, he can make his way up to being that secondary option and give whoever that long-term quarterback is another weapon on the opposite side of Nacua. Went on to 14 with the Ravens going Spencer Fano. I mean, I honestly don't hate this pick because I do believe the Ravens are going to bring back Tyler Linderbaum. I know people are going to be like, the Ravens don't have that kind of cap space. We saw it last year with Ronnie Stanley, where everybody was saying he's going to go to New England or Kansas City or wherever, and then the Ravens were able to bring him back. I think they'll do the same thing with Linderbaum, but you're going to have to replace 2 guards because Falele's gone. He's a free agent, and the Ravens are not bringing back. And then Andrew Voorhees was equally as bad, and they're going to have to replace him. And Fano, who came in, his arms aren't as long as maybe most people thought, and he was even working on the center drills. So, they are, if they do bring back, which I do think they will bring back Tyler Linderbaum, maybe you can, pencil in Fano at guard, or he might end up kind of like Will Campbell. And then you have those guys, locked in for a decent amount. Then you can progress the other guard position. And who knows? The Ravens could go in a lot of different directions. But hey, if Fano is there and the Ravens view him as a guard, not a tackle, I wouldn't hate the pick. Went on to 15 with the Bucks. Cassius Howell. Yeah, I mean, this is probably Howell's maybe ceiling up there. Was a tremendous player. He's better than his teammate, Shamar Stewart, who was drafted last year in the first round. Because Howell has the production. He has, just like Bain, he has the production. His arms aren't as long as you maybe would hope. But I still think he'll be a great player at the next level. And a Bucks team that needs to address the defensive line and specifically the edge position, Howe would be a tremendous fit and give this Bucks defense a top tier pass rush that they haven't had in a while to get this Bucks team back to being contending. We're on to 16 with the Jets. Jordan Tyson. I kind of thought about this in my mock. Didn't end up having him go here. I mean, if he's there at 16, I don't hate it because he's a great player. Might fall due to injuries, even though I still think if I were a GM, I'd pick him in the top 10 just because he's that talented. And I know he has so many different injuries, but we've seen guys coming out who are like, considered injury prone, and then they've had great careers. And you're saying, maybe that guy should have gone earlier because, if it wasn't for those injuries, he might have been considered a top 5 talent. So, and look, you go whoever the best defender you think is at number 2, and then you go with, if one of the top receivers is there, you go with them. Maybe go with a corner. Like, the Jets have a lot of different directions they could go. And I think Tyson would be phenomenal. Opposite of Garrett Wilson, to give whoever that quarterback is another weapon to throw to. Went on to 17 with the Lions going to Akeem Mesidor, which I don't hate. I thought the Lions have needed to address that secondary edge rusher ever since they drafted Hutchinson back in 2022. And, a Lions team, like, I think Mesidor, if he is going to go in the first round, a team that's going to draft him, I feel like should be a team that is trying to compete right away. Like, so the Lions, who are trying to, compete for the Super Bowl after a disappointing year, trade away David Montgomery to the Texans, which I thought was an interesting move, but they are going to need to pay a lot of guys, so they are going to have to free up cap space. And I think Montgomery will be really good in Houston. But, Mesidor can give them a guy who can play right away. Like, some of these guys, it's the potential that they could become that player. Mesidor is already that guy. And if you plug him into Detroit's defense, like, he could be an instant impact player the way the Lions need him to be. But on to 18 with the Vikings going Dylan Thieneman. Yeah, I mean, 3 safeties, it seems more than likely will go in the first round. And look, Harrison Smith, he's not retiring yet, but will eventually retire. You're going to need to replace him. And also, people forget that they lost Cam Bynum last offseason. He left to join the Colts in that signing that huge contract after a breakout year in 2024. So they kind of missed him, out there as, that secondary safety opposite of Harrison Smith. And Thieneman can give that because at Oregon, he played in a similar role to where Minnesota could use him as, like, putting him in multiple different spots and being able to use him as not just a safety that's, like, out there to, like, stop the run and force QBs to, like, throw in underneath, but can also be a great coverage guy, and I think would be a phenomenal fit for this Minnesota defense. We're on to 19 with the Panthers going Caleb Banks, which I don't hate. You have Derek Brown, who, went on the field, is an amazing player, and would give this Panthers defense 2 elite premium interior offensive linemen. I mean, Banks, if it wasn't for injuries, he would have been a top half of the first round pick with how talented he is. And the Panthers team that made the playoffs is clearly going up and up. Banks would be a tremendous fit and would give this Panthers defense a legit secondary guy on that defensive line to be that interior presence to help out that they kind of wanted for Milton Williams. Colin Hood, I don't. I mean, I would love this pick, and they released Trayvon Diggs, who was god awful. Who knows how much longer Deron Bland's going to be in Dallas? Because both those guys were similar players under Dan Quinn, where they were just ball hawks. Weren't exactly the greatest in coverage. And if you get EMW, you get Colton Hood. It gives you two young prospects in that secondary for Christian Parker, new DC, to work with. And it gives Dallas, a secondary they haven't had since probably, it's been a while since they've had like plenty of elite talent in that secondary. You might have to go back to like 2016 when they had like Byron Jones and Brandon Carr. So I would love for Dallas, like they need to just go best defender because outside of like defensive tackle, every other position on the defense they need. Moving on to 29 with the Steelers going Denzel Boston. I mean, I would love this pick. Pittsburgh needs a secondary guy because we saw when DK got suspended at the end of the year that they didn't have anybody else. Like Calvin Austin is all right. Roman Wilson, I know people want him to break out, and who knows, but like they don't have anybody else outside of DK who even he's not as great as he once was, and a Steelers team that still thinks they can contend, which I don't understand. I feel like you should enter into a rebuilding phase and suck for a couple of years the way we see certain teams do, like the Texans and Patriots, and now, and they have, they're Super Bowl contenders because they weren't that great, so they were able to get top picks and land elite talent. So yeah, moving on to the Chargers with Vega Iwane. I mean, if he falls to LA at 22, which could happen, like if Maui Noah and Fano fall because teams are saying, maybe they're going to have to play guard, maybe that could push him down the board and he could end up going around this range. Like Zion Johnson's a free agent, probably not going to bring him back. Bradley Bozeman retired, which Chargers fans love. Mekhi Becton's going to be released, so they have 3 interior positions they're going to have to replace. And Vega Iwane would be a phenomenal fit. And you have your tackles, and when healthy, they're one of the best, maybe the best tackle duo in the league. But you need that interior to be better. And it starts with getting elite guards. Like the Chargers need to come out of this draft with at least 2 interior offensive linemen, if not 3, to really give this team a belief that they can be contending. Because if they don't have a good interior offensive line, teams are going to be able to get after Justin Herbert, and it might be another disappointing year where they lose in the first round because that interior offensive line is not good. We're at 23 with the Eagles going Kenny Snead. If he falls to Philly, because it seems like his ceiling is probably Tampa, it seems like he's not going to go as late as most people, including myself, predicted. And it's rumored that Dallas Goedert is not coming back, meaning Philly will be in need of a tight end. Now, I did see a report that they might target David Njoku, which might then stop them from drafting Kenny Sadiq, and maybe he doesn't go as high as people predict him. If Philly is in the market for a tight end, Sadiq would be a perfect fit and would give this offense another dynamic playmaker for the future. Moving on to 24 with the Browns going Blake Miller. I mean, you go Carnell Tate at 6. You still need offensive linemen, so I don't hate it. it is interesting because Dewan Jones, who will more than likely be the left tackle if healthy for week one, unless they like bring in somebody else, um, is very injury prone. So I wouldn't hate Cleveland going out and drafting another tackle, but like Charles Davis says, you can put them in the interior at either guard spot, and then if an injury happens, you can move them to tackle. Or if you have Titus Howard, the way Houston was putting him, if you have Titus Howard at guard, you can put Blake Mailer at right tackle, and then you kind of have, at least 3/5 of your offensive line secured, and hopefully they bring some guys in free agency and really invest into this offensive line, because with everybody leaving, which I don't think has ever happened in NFL history, you're going to need to help out whoever's starting at quarterback, and they gotta use at least one, if not both, first round picks on tackles. We're on the 25th with the Bears going Lee Hunter, which, I don't hate. I mean, Chicago needs to get better on the defensive side. Maybe edge, maybe interior, maybe safety. If one of those guys falls, because they have so many free agents. But they have Gervon Dexter, who's been a fine second round pick, or was he a third round pick? I forget. I think he was a third round pick. Um, or was he? He might have been the second round pick, and then Tyreek Stevenson was the third round pick. But you have him, who's been fine. You have Grady Jarrett, who's up there in age, isn't as great as he was a couple of years ago. And Chicago wants to be contending and picking late in the first round because they're competing for the Super Bowl. Um you gotta be better on the defensive line, and that starts with improving the interior and the edge. Went on to 26 with the Bills going Omar Cooper Jr., who a lot of people are raising into the first round because he ran a 4.42, because he was amazing in the drills. And I don't hate it. Buffalo needs to go wide receiver in the first round, or try to address it with like a trade, um, or maybe a free agency. Maybe they can get Alec Pierce, who might end up being a free agent because Indy had to transition tag Daniel Jones. But Buffalo needs to get, playmaker on the outside. You have Khalil Shakir, who's a slot receiver. You have the tight ends and the double DKs, but you don't have anybody else. Keon Coleman is clearly not worked out, and Omar Cooper would give this Bills offense another element to help out Josh Allen when it comes playoff time. We're on 27 with the Niners going Monroe Freeling. Yeah, it's been revealed Trent Williams might end up being a free agent, because San Fran wants to lower his cap hit, but them and Williams are far away from negotiation talks. So Trent Williams does become a free agent. He would be a instant impact guy, unless he retires, which I don't think he would, but is a possibility. But if he ends up leaving, and if they end up having to cut him and he goes somewhere else, San Fran's going to need to go after this offensive line. And Freeling, who's a guy who I've seen people mocked in like the top 10, top 15, because of just being a left tackle and because he was so good at the combine. But if he falls to San Fran down here, I wouldn't hate it. Especially if the Niners, even if Trent Williams is there, they're still going to need to find his eventual replacement, and Freeland would be that guy who you could put at right tackle for now, and then eventually move over to left tackle. Went on to Houston, going Caleb Lomu. I don't hate it. You trade away Titus Howard, who I get they weren't going to extend, so I get why you traded him away. They traded away Drew Scruggs, who was not good, but they're trading away a lot of offensive linemen, and yeah, and it's just Houston needs to protect CJ Stroud. They need to invest into this offensive line, and Lomo, who some people think could be a guard, him and Fano, that Utah tackles could end up being guards. Though it is rumored that they might be moving Arion Harrison to right tackle. So maybe you can put Lomo at left tackle and um, have those tackles in the future for Houston um, to build off of. Round 229 with the Rams going Maxi Hanachor. Yeah, I mean, Rob Havenstein did retire, which was expected. I mean, they did have good play from, I think it was Wendell McClendon, something like that, opposite of Joe Chonopu. No, not Chonopu. Who's the Rams left tackle? Sound like the tip of my tongue. But like, they are going to need to replace Rob Havenstein and Maxi Hanachor, who really has, you know, risen up the board and becoming a first round tackle. LA late in the first round, will value protecting Stafford. I know a lot of people want to say Ty Simpson. I think unless the Rams draft him, I don't think he ends up going in the first round. Like, I don't think the Jets or the Browns are going to select him. And unless the team trades up, like we saw with Jackson Dart, which is possible, I don't see Simpson end up being a first round pick because it's just these teams that could draft Simpson have bigger needs. And I don't think these GMs would panic on drafting a quarterback. Like, unless the Rams draft him or a team like the Jets who maybe use those 2 first round picks and then want to trade up for Ty Simpson, I get that. But I don't see like New York or Cleveland using the 2 first they have now to draft a quarterback. So, because I just don't see those GMs panicking and trying to draft a guy when it's like 2027 is better. And why would you risk taking a guy who's not even seen as like a true first round quarterback when you can address bigger issues that the team has? Moving on to 30 with the Broncos going CJ Allen. I mean, yeah. I mean, I could see him going a lot higher than this, especially if Sonny Styles does go top 5. Like a team like Dallas, team like the Rams, maybe a team, in that range, even Detroit, Minnesota, like they could end up saying, you know, we like CJ Allen a lot and we would take him as a first round pick. Denver, tremendous defense, but can be improved. And CJ Allen would give this Denver defense an elite player. And I mean, it doesn't hurt drafting a Georgia defender in the first round. 31 with the Patriots going Caden Proctor. I mean, I don't hate this. I mean, if New England eventually does put Will Campbell at guard and Jared Wilson at center, Proctor can be that left tackle. Or if they want to put Proctor at guard, I don't hate it. They are going to have to eventually find that right tackle and center. So I don't hate drafting Proctor, who could fit multiple spots on this New England offensive line. Give Drake May more protection. And I mean, he has the potential. It's just we didn't see it a lot in 2025, but it's there. And Proctor would be phenomenal. And then finally, 32, the Seahawks going Jadarian Price. Whoa, I have not seen this in a mock draft. Yeah, I mean, Kenneth Walker was not tagged, which I didn't expect him to be tagged. It felt like Brees Hall was the only running back going to get tagged. So, but he's a free agent, and a lot of people have been linking him to like the Giants, certain teams that could end up using a running back, and then Zach Charbonnet coming off that knee injury. Who knows when he's going to be um back? And if they do lose, Kenneth Walker, maybe John Schneider says, you know, this isn't a great running back class, but maybe we should draft our guy here, knowing he might not make it to end of the second round where Seattle's going to be picking. And while I do think it's a really big reach for Price, if Seattle believes that he's a dynamic running back and they want to, get his fifth year option, I don't hate it. But that'll do it for today's video. Hope you guys hit the like button. Hope you guys subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I will catch you guys in my next video, which will be my free agency predictions on Sunday. And then I'll have free agency content all throughout next week as it opens on Monday. And we get to see where some of these top guys will end up, along with maybe some big trades that could happen. But until then, hope you have a great day. Bye.